Hilchos Tefillin Perek Shlishi, Laws of Tefillin, Chapter 3. Till now we talked about writing, the portions that go inside the tefillin. Today we're going to talk about the making of the actual tefillin boxes. So I brought some of my own tefillin today, so we can use for show and tell and see, describe what the Rambam means as we go through the chapter. Says the Rambam, Halacha Aleph, Shmona halachot yesh b'maaseh tefillin. There are 8 special laws when it comes to making the tefillin boxes. Kulan halacha leMoshe miSinai. They are all a direct oral tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai. Ulefichach, and therefore kulan ma'akvot. They're all essential. Ve'im shina ba'achat mehen pasal. And if you make a change in even one of them, you've disqualified the entire tefillin. Says the Rambam, ve'elu hein, they are the following. And he gives us the short list, and then he expands upon it throughout the chapter, giving detail to every one of the 8. Number 1, sheyiyu merubaot. Tefillin have to be square. Now literally the merubaot means 4-sided. And we'll see why this is important in a second. They have to be 4-sided. V'chein tfiratan biribua. And there's stitches that go around the tefillin box, as you can see. There's a little stitching that goes around. That also has to be 4-sided. But not just 4-sided like a rectangle. Says the Rambam, ba'alachsonan biribua. Their diagonal has to fit into a square. Take a look at this diagram. You can see that if you have a square, that's the inside, and a line going across the diagonal can also fit in a square, that's when you know that it's a perfect square. So long as you have a rectangular shape, the line drawn across the diagonal will not fit in a square. But if you have a perfect square, then even when you take a line across the diagonal, it'll fit in a square. That's what the Rambam means, v'alachsonan beribua, that the diagonal of the tefillin box should also be a square. Hence, the length and the width, the 4 sides of the tefillin, are equal. Ad sheyeh lahen arba zaviyot shavot, to the point that you have 4 equal sides. That's all number 1. That's all condition number 1. They have to be fully square. Number 2, v'sheyeh ba'or shel rosh tzurat shin miyamin u'mismol. On the leather of the box of the head tefillin, there has to be a letter shin, both on the right side and on the left side. You notice here, the one on the right side is 3 heads, like a regular shin. The one on the left side has 4. We'll talk about that later, why that is. Number 3, v'sheyichroch haparshiyot b'matlit. You have to wrap the portions that go inside the tefillin with fabric. Yesterday I showed you, and the day before that, how we have the 4 portions that go inside the tefillin. Before they go into the compartments, they have to be wrapped. In the Rambam's days, it was with actual fabric. Today, the commentaries write, we use parchment. It's a small piece of parchment here, and it goes around the portions. You wrap it up, and then you put it inside the box. But before that, v'sheyichroch otan b'sei'ar me'al hamatlit. You also wrap it with hair above the fabric. So fabric is number 1. Then you take hair, and what Rambam will tell us later, it's hair, especially from the tail of a calf. Rabbi Teitelbaum, who has been supplying with many of our show and tell objects, was nice enough to give me some of this. This is actual hair, shaped like a Torah scroll. It's kind of funny. And this is a piece off of the roll, and you literally wrap the portions with this hair, and then you stick it in to the boxes. And then you put it into the compartments. Next condition, the stitching. When we sew up the tefillin, this is the sewing here, also has to be done not with regular thread, but with special sinews from an animal. Also, another condition, you are supposed to make a passageway from the skin, the leather which is covering the tefillin, where the strap can go through, to the point that it'll be able to pass through easily inside of its tovar. Tovar either means a handle, this part is like a handle to the rest of the box, or it means a loop. The string goes through, the strap goes through on a loop. Another condition, the straps of tefillin have to be black. We'll talk about that more in detail at the end of the chapter. And that the knot that we make on the tefillin should be a well-known knot, kitsurat dalit, in the form of a dalit. And we'll talk about what that means later on in the chapter. Now the Rambam goes through in detail every one of these conditions. Halacha bet, ketzad osim tefillin shel rosh. How do we form the head tefillin? Looks pretty complex. It's got 4 compartments. It's a whole piece of leather. How do we do it? Says the Rambam, and he gives us the method that was used in those days, a bit more primitive. Today it's a little more professional. Lokchin eitz meruba. You take a square piece of wood, orko kirachbo v'chigavho. It's a cube. Its length is the same as its width, is the same as its height. The height part is not so essential. Says the Rambam, if the height of the tefillin was a little more than its width, or a little less, in bekach klum. There's no big deal about that. As a matter of fact, I have here my tefillin of both Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, and you can see a slight difference. The Rashi tefillin, the height is a little taller. So the length and width are exactly the same, but the height isn't the same. When it comes to the Rabbeinu Tam, they were able to make that extra hidur, the extra scrupulous part of the mitzvah, where it's a full cube. The height is the same as the length and the width. But again, the height doesn't have to be, but it's ideal. The bottom line particularity is only that the length should be the same as the width. What do? We have this piece of wood. Then you dig into it 3 notches, which then leaves it with 4 protrusions, like this. One of the rare examples where the Rambam himself drew a diagram in his manuscript, and it's actually printed over here, you can see it, where you have, this is the piece of wood, it's the mold, you dig in 3 holes and you're left with 4 protrusions. The lokhin or, then you take a piece of leather, of raw leather, raw hide, and you soak it in water, and you insert the wood into this leather, and you make sure to insert the leather between every single hole, so you're actually creating the form, and then you make the shape of the tefillin. I showed you the other day, this is an example of a raw mold, where you have the wood coming in here, and the leather gets shaped on top of it, such that you have the basic form of the tefillin shorosh being formed. Then, mikan. We squeeze it while it's wet from this side and from that side, ad she'osin bo dmut shin, sheyesh la shlosha rashin miyamin hameniach tefillin, to the point that we make the form of the letter shin with 3 heads on the right side of the one putting on the tefillin, udmut shin sheyesh la arba'a rashim mismol hameniach, and another shin that this time has 4 heads on the left side of the one who puts on the tefillin. As we can see in our shorosh, in our head tefillins, so if I'm wearing it this way, it's on my head like this. This is my right side, this is my left side. On the right side, you have a 3-headed shorosh. On the left side, you have a 4-headed shorosh. What's the significance of these shins and why 3 and 4 heads? There are many reasons. One of them is very interesting. The letter shin has the numerical value of 300. There are 300 days in a year where we put on tefillin, excluding Shabbat and holidays, 300 days exactly. And the reason why we have 3 and 4, some say it's because it equals 7, total of 7 branches. That's the 7 branches of the menorah, or the 3 fathers and the 4 mothers, 3 avot, 4 imahot. There's another interesting reason. Moshe Rabbeinu, we say he got the Torah in 2 ways, written and engraved. A written shin has 3 heads, but if you engrave a shin into a stone, you'll end up with 4 protrusions around it. So we make the 4-headed shin to remind us of the engraved shin. And fascinatingly, take this. A shin plus shin, the numerical value is 600. Then you have the word. When you put a shin next to another shin, it spells the word shesh, which means 6. That's 606. 3 heads and 4 heads is another 7 for a total of 613 for the mitzvahs. As a matter of fact, that's why many people have the custom that we look at the shins of the tefillin when we take off the tefillin to remind us of the 613 mitzvahs. So this is a special halacha that we put a shin on the right and left side of the tefillin. Halacha gimel. Now you have this tefillin sitting on the mold. You leave the leather on the wood till it dries. Then you take off the leather from the imum. Imum means a mold of wood. And it turns out automatically that this piece of leather will now have 4 compartments. You left it on the mold, you take it out, boom, inside you have 4 holes. Of course, you form it and you make it nice. You put a portion into each of the compartments. Then you can see on this mold they have a piece of leather protruding. That's because you're going to fold it under. You take this leather and you fold it back under, and you sew it on all 4 sides. This is the stitching. The stitching we saw before is because of that exact reason. Because part of the tefillin is coming back from under, you need to sew it together. And from this skin, this leather on the bottom, we leave some place on the edge, a place where the strap can go in like a little handle. V'hu nikra ma'boret. In halachic literature, this is called the ma'boret, which means a passageway. Because literally, it's the passageway for the strap. So that is the tefillin shel rosh. Halacha dalid, the ketzad osin tefillin shel yad. How do you make the hand tefillin? It's pretty much the same process, but much simpler. Because the shel yad is only one compartment. Here's my hand tefillin here. It's only one compartment into which all four portions go in together. So all you have to do with your mold is make it with one part. Lokchin eitz meruba, you take a wooden piece that's square, or kokerachbo, same length and width, v'yeh govho ke'etzba, and the height, here the Rambam doesn't even say the ideal height is to be cube. Here the height of the hand tefillin can just be like a finger breadth. Or yater al zeh ma'at, or pachot ma'at, a little more, a little less. Umechapin oto be'or ratov, you cover it with wet leather. Umanichin et ha'or al himum at sheyivash, and you simply leave the leather on the mold till it dries. V'choletz et ha'or, you take off the skin, and voila, you have one compartment inside. Umaniach et arba ha'parashiyot bimkom ha'etz, and you put all four portions into the place where the wood used to be. In other words, the hole that was created. Umachazir miktzat ha'or milamata, like the shalosh, you take some of the leather, you put it under. V'tofro me'arba pinotav, and you also stitch it. You can see on the shal yad too, we have a stitching, a square stitching. And manichim min ha'or tovar, you leave a handle in the skin of the shal yad, mekom ha'ritzuot, for the place of the straps. That is the making, the basic making of the tefillin shel yad and the tefillin shel rosh. And now we have a very important halacha. Halacha hey, ketzad sidur haparashiyot b'tefillah shel rosh. What is the order of the portions in the head tefillin? We see there's four compartments and there's four portions. Here's one of them. They all have to go inside. What's the order? Says the Rambam rules like Rashi. You know, there's a famous argument among Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam as to how tefillin should be worn. This is the argument. Which order do the portions go in the tefillin? The Rambam rules like Rashi, and let's first see his opinion. Machnis parasha acharona. You take the last portion, shehi v'hayayim shamoa, which is v'hayayim shamoa, and you put it bebayit rishon shehu al yamin hameniach, in the first compartment, which would be to the right of the person putting on the tefillin. So this is my tefillin, and I'm putting it on my head like this. This is to the right of me. In here goes v'hayayim shamoa. Then, ushma smuchala. I take the portion of shma, and I put it right next to it, in the second compartment. V'hayaki v'yacha. The next portion, v'hayaki v'yacha, goes b'bayit shlishi, in the third portion, smuchali shma, next to shma. The kadesh li, and the portion about the firstborn, b'bayit revi'i, goes in the fourth compartment, shuli smola meniach tefillin, which is on the left of the person putting on the tefillin. And the result is what's most important. Kedei sheyehei hakorei shelefanav, so that the reader, if somebody was standing in front of you, keneged pnei hameniach, with their face facing the person putting on the tefillin, korei al haseder hazeh, will read it in this order, which happens to be the order that they appear in the Torah. Kadesh, v'haya, shma, v'haya. He'll go in order of the Torah, kegon zeh, like this. And again, we have a diagram from the Rambam. Some of you have it in your texts, where the Rambam shows you what this means. Kadesh, v'haya, shma, v'haya. And it's so important, says the Rambam, that the im hechlif sidur zeh, if you change this order, psulot, it's disqualified. In other words, it's not a game. It's very integral. The way you put the portions in is super important to the mitzvah. Of course, Rabbeinu Tam, who is the other primary opinion about tefillin, has an argument with this. And you can see it here in the diagram over here. This is Rashi. You have the tefillin facing you. So here's a guy wearing tefillin. You're looking at him. You can see Kadesh v'haya, Shma v'haya. Rabbeinu Tam has one slight difference. He says Kadesh v'haya, and then v'haya Shma. He switches the order of Shma and v'hayayim Shamoa. There are two other opinions. They're called the Shimush Rabbah and the Ravid. Basically, this guy is the same as Rashi, just in the opposite way. Kadesh v'haya, Shma v'haya, from the perspective of the person wearing the tefillin, not the person reading it facing you. The Ravid is also the same as Rabbeinu Tam, Kadesh v'haya Shma, but in the opposite way. Many tzaddikim used to put on 4 pairs of tefillin. It's not actually 4 pairs, because there's only a head tefillin. The Shimush Rabbah has the same hand tefillin as Rashi. And the Ravid has the same hand tefillin as Rabbeinu Tam, because on the hand tefillin they're all in one scroll. But in the head tefillin it matters which way you put it in. So many tzaddikim, including the Rebbe himself, testified that he put on these 4 pairs of tefillin. Most of us today, we put on 2. Shulchan Aruch says, because the order of the portions is so integral to the point that if you change the order, it's pasul, therefore the halacha follows Rashi, and we go with him. But if you're a Yerei Shamayim, if you're a God-fearing person, you put on a 2nd pair of tefillin as well, to fulfill the obligation according to Rabbeinu Tam. But nevertheless, the halacha remains like Rashi. This is the order as we put in our tefillin: Kadesh v'Haya, Shema, and v'Haya. Says the Rambam halacha vav. That's all as far as the tefillah shel rosh. However, the tefillah shel yad, the hand tefillin, kotvam ba'arba'ad dapin, you write all 4 portions on 4 columns, b'or echad aroch kesefer Torah, on one long piece of leather like a sefer Torah, like a Torah scroll, as it's over here. Kigon zeh, like this. And again, in the manuscripts, the Rambam has a picture of how his tefillin looked. In katvan al arba orot v'yichnisan bebayit echad. If you had to, or for whatever reason you ended up doing it, that you wrote the 4 portions on 4 separate pieces of skin, and you put them all into one compartment, yatza, you fulfilled your obligation. Ve'inot tzarich ledabkam. You don't have to even glue them together. But ideally, it should be on one piece of parchment, like a sefer Torah. By the way, that's this is according to Rashi. It follows the order Kadesh v'Haya, Shema, and then v'Haya. According to Rabbeinu Tam, who has Kadesh v'Haya, v'Haya, Shema, even on the Shel Yad, it's different. When you open up a Rabbeinu Tam Shel Yad, you will see Kadesh v'Haya, v'Haya, and Shema. However, the portions must be written in order that they appear in the Sefer Torah. Therefore, a scribe writing Rabbeinu Tam's Tefillin will write Kadesh, then he'll write the portion of v'Haya, then he'll skip and he'll do Shema all the way on the left, and then go back to v'Haya. So you'll end up with Kadesh v'Haya, v'Haya, Shema, but in order, in fact, it's going to be written according to the way that it appears in the Torah. Halacha zayin kishu golel parashat, when you roll up the portions, like I'm doing right now, I'm rolling it up. Bein shel rosh, bein shel yad, both the head or the hand. Golelotan misofan litchilatan. You roll it from the end to the beginning, from left to right. Ad shetimtza, till you find kishetiftacha parsha. When you open the portion, tikra kol parsha o parsha. You're going to be able to read every portion mitchilata lesofa ad sofa, from the beginning to the end, from right to left. And now the Rambam revisits the topic that I mentioned before about wrapping the portions in fabric before you put them into the boxes. Halacha chet says the Rambam ukishemachnisin et parashiyot babatim shalahem. When we insert the portions in their compartments, korchinotan b'matlit. We first wrap them with fabric. And again, that was in the Rambam's days. Today we wrap them in actual parchment. The al hamatlit seyar. On top of the parchment, or the fabric, we put a little bit of hair. And then you put it into the compartments. Says the Rambam, this here, it must come from a kosher, domesticated animal or a kosher beast. It could even come from an animal that died, or an animal that was a treifa, which means it had a mortal wound. It doesn't have to be ritually slaughtered, but it has to be a kosher animal. Says the Rambam, the entire nation has the custom, it's accepted practice in the Jewish people, to wrap the portions with the hair of the tail of a calf, which is as we do today. When we sew the tefillin, the stitching that's made around the boxes over here, are also done with special stuff. Not just with thread, but it's done with ein tofrin ela begidin shel behema or shel chaya tehora. We only sew it with sinews of an animal that's domesticated or a beast that's kosher. Ta'afilu again min nevelot trefot shelahen, even from the carcasses, even from an animal that died of a mortal wound, doesn't have to be slaughtered, but it has to be kosher. Lokchin agidin sheyesh ba'akeva behema or chaya tehorim. You take the sinews that can be found at the heel of the animal or the beast that's kosher. Behem levanim, they're very white, and you use them. Ve'im kashim, if they're tough, merakchin otan ba'avanim v'chayotzei bahen, you can soften it with stones or the like, ad sheyeasu kepishtan, till they become softer, more manipulative, more manipulatable, like flax or linen. V'tovinotan v'shozrinotan, then you spin them and you make them into a thread. Ubahen tofrin tefillin, and that's what we use to sew up tefillin. V'yiriot sefer Torah, and in fact also a Torah scroll. Torah scroll is made up of many pieces of parchment put together. What holds the parchments together is stitchings made from gidin, from these sinews. Says the Rambam halacha yud, kisha tofrin tefillin, when we sew up the tefillin, tofrinotan beribua, we sew the stitching in a square, as we saw before. The halacha rovachat, it's the common halacha, sheyiyu b'chol tzad shalosh tefirot, that on every side you have 3 stitchings. It's not so clear, maybe on this side you can see it a little clearer on the bottom. There's 4 holes, which means that there's 3 stitchings on each side. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, for a total, ad sheyiyu akol shtei mesrei tefirot, till you have a total of 12 stitchings. Bein shel yad, bein shel rosh, both on the hand and on the head. You can see it here too. This is the head tefillin. On the hand tefillin, it's the same thing. You see the box, the 4 holes. Also on this side, we got 12 stitches all around. The number 12 is ideal, but if you made it with 10 stitches or 14, you can do that, it's fine. The cholat tfirot, in all the stitchings, the thread should be threaded on both sides. Like you can see over here. The stitching can be seen on this side, all three, on each side, and over here too. Typically when you stitch, you go in and out, and it only ends up on one side in each stitch. Here you have to go back and forth 2 times so that the stitching can be seen on both sides. Halacha Yud Aleph. Let's talk now again a little more about this shorosh. The notch that separates between each compartment of the shorosh has to go all the way down until the place of the sewing. This is more of a destroyed tefillin shorosh, but you can see how it's literally separate compartments. And that's how it has to be. Each compartment must be completely separate. Now, what if you can see the hole? It's not all the way down, but you can tell that there's a notch. You can tell there's 4 separate compartments, everybody sees it. Even if the notch doesn't reach all the way down to the place of the stitching, the tefillin are still kosher. But if you can't even tell that there's a notch there, psulot, that's disqualified. Says the Rambam, you must check, you must ascertain that the notches are complete. You must pass through every notch, al gabeha or on top of the leather, chut o meshicha, a thread or a strand, lehavdil ben bayit lebayit, to differentiate between one compartment and the other. This one, which is kind of coming apart, you can actually do that. We take this here that I showed you before, the actual sinews that we actually use, and you can put it all the way through. It will literally go all the way down because the notch is all the way through. Uminhag pashut, says the Rambam, it's actually a common custom to actually pass through one of these sinews that we use for sewing in every single notch of all 3. By the way, if you would leave it like that, the tefillin would eventually come apart. Modern day tefillin are actually glued together. So they make them into 4 compartments, and you can tell that they're 4 compartments, but then they kind of bring them together so it holds. So the shape of the square holds. Halacha Yud Bet, now we move on to the straps of the tefillin. That's all about the boxes. Let's talk about the straps. V'keitzad osin haritzuot. How do we make the tefillin straps? Lokchin ritzuah shel or. You take a strap of leather. Rechava ke'orech haseora. Wide as the length of a barley corn. It's between 1 to 1.5 centimeters. So this is actually a pretty generous strap, which is good because you don't want it to shrink. But that's the minimum. The minimum width is the length of a barley corn. If it was wider than that, it's kosher. How long does the strap of the shalosh have to be? You look at a shalosh tefillin, there's 2 straps, but it's not actually 2. It begins as one long one. You thread it through here, and then you get the size of your head, you make the knot, and 2 straps come out. That's what Rambam says right now. The length of the strap that's used in forming the head tefillin has to be long enough that it should go around your head, and you can tie the little bit complex knot. And the straps will come down, stretch down on either side of you, to the point that they reach your belly or a bit above it. The Zohar says to the Brit Milah. Some have a custom to go even further till the knee. The Rebbe's tefillin were also quite long. But the bottom line, it has to be pretty long. It's got to go around your head, the knot, and stretching down. What about the hand tefillin? How long does the ritzuot of the hand tefillin have to be? This is a bit of a misconception that Rambam is about to bust. There's a myth that people think. We have a custom that when you put on tefillin on your hand, you wrap it around your bicep. Then we put on, the 3 wraps around over here, 7 on the arm, and then on the palm and on the finger. The Rambam says halachically, dry halacha, the length of the strap of the shel yad has to be enough, just enough to surround the bicep, and tie the knot, and simply stretch the strap to the middle finger. So I'll just demonstrate it, and I don't try this at home because tefillin have to actually be put on, not on clothing, but on your actual sleeve. But if you see here, you put on the tefillin like this, you tighten the knot, and you don't have to do anything else. You take the strap straight from here, and you go to the middle finger, and you wrap 3 times. Boom, and that's it, you're done. You don't need more than that. Matter of fact, when we used to go on Miftzayim, on Fridays to help Jews put on tefillin, we were taught that if you meet somebody who's very big in size and there's not enough to make all these other wrappings, the main thing is that it should go to the finger. So you'd rather skip one of these and then bring it all the way up to the finger because that's the minimum size of the Ritzuah Shel Yad. So it just has to go across the bicep, tie the knot, and go to the middle finger. V'yichrach mimena al etzba'o shalosh krichot, enough to tie around the middle finger 3 times. V'yikshor, and tie it, that's it. If the straps were longer than these things, also it's fine. It's still kosher. These are just the minimum shiurim. Halacha Yud Gimel, the Rambam now returns to the head tefillin. You insert the strap of the head tefillin into the passageway. You measure it to your head. And you tie a square knot like a dalet. Now how could a square knot be a dalet? A dalet is a dalet. So the Bet Yosef says that the Rambam means, you see the picture over here, that you tie a knot that's actually square, and that way every departure point of a strap will create a dalet. So as this strap goes down, you have a dalet here. Look at it this way, you have a dalet there. Turn it upside down, you have a dalet there. There's a dalet at every edge. That's what the Rambam means. However, the Bet Yosef says that today it's preferable to actually make the knot as a dalet. The knot itself is shaped like a dalet. You can see that over here. In fact, all Sephardim and Hasidim have this custom of dalet. Many Ashkenazim have the square. But the bottom line is that it's a complicated knot, like a dalet. It says the Rambam interestingly, the kesher zet tzarich kol talmid chacham l'lamdo. This knot must be learned by every single sage. You can't be considered a Torah sage if you don't learn how to make this knot. But I can't let you know how to make it in text. It's a visual thing you got to learn. You can only do it by the sight of the eye. Today they already have illustrations with pictures, but if you're just writing words, you won't be able to communicate how to make the knot. That's for the head tefillin. Same applies to the hand tefillin. There's a special knot. Kosher kesher kimin yud. You make a knot the shape of a yud. You can see over here, there's a complicated knot over here, but on the edge, it gets a yud shape. So that's the hand knot. You must make sure that the strap of the shel yad can ascend and descend in the knot. It has to be movable. So that way, so you can widen it and tighten it when you want to tie it to your hand. If it would be stable, it would just be one size, it wouldn't fit all. So that's how we make the knot in a way where the strap can go both ways. This is more of a Chabad custom knot where the knot is where the strap and the knot are on the inside of the tefillin. Many people, you'll notice, will have a knot over here and the strap will go over here like the Sephardi knot, and it goes straight out. But the bottom line is that either way, this strap is loose so that it can be adjusted to your hand. Halacha Yudalit, Haritzuot shel tefillin. The straps of the tefillin, bein shel rosh, bein shel yad, both the head and the hand, pnehem achitzonim shchorim. Their outer side must be black. Side that faces outward is black. That's a halacha straight from Moshe on Mount Sinai. But the backs of the straps, since they're only on the inside, if they were pale, green, or white, they're kosher. You see here, the back of the strap is brown. The outside is black. You shouldn't make them red, because that can arouse suspicion. Perhaps the strap will get overturned. It will be disgusting. People will think you're bleeding on your skin and you have some kind of disease or something. No good. Do it another color, but not red. The dry halacha is that the backs of the straps should be the same color as the raw box of the tefillin. So the top of the tefillin is painted black, but the bottom remains raw. So here you can see this color would dictate how to make the backs of your straps. Im yeruka yerukin, vim levana levanim. If it was a greenish tinge, you can make the backs of the strap that color. If it was white, you keep it white. The noyhu la tefillin, says the Rambam, its beauty for the tefillin, sheyu kulan shchorot. It should be completely black. Haktzitza v'haretzua kula, the box and the entire strap. Matter of fact, my hand tefillin are like that. You can see here that the actual straps are black on both sides. The commentaries write that this custom never got spread to all the Jewish people, so it's no big deal if you don't have your tefillin fully black. On my Rashi tefillin, my head tefillin, I have it, brown on the outside. The Rebbe's tefillin, we have pictures that were black on the outside, brown on the inside. The bottom line is that the halacha should be fulfilled, that it should be black on the outside. That's what's important. Halacha tetvav, ha'or shemechapin bo ha'tefillin. All the leather that's used in the making of tefillin, both the one that covers the boxes, in other words, what the boxes are made out of, and the leather used in making of the straps, who or shel behema or chaya or of hatehorim, has to be made from the skin of a domesticated animal or a beast or a bird that are kosher. And again, it could be from a carcass, from an animal that died of its wounds. It's fine. It doesn't have to be slaughtered, but it has to be kosher. If you made it from leather of non-kosher animals, or you decided to cover your tefillin in gold boxes, you're like, you know what? I want to honor Hashem, do a nice mitzvah, make it gold. Nope. Psulot, disqualified. You got to follow the rules, it's got to be leather. Additionally, the leather that's used in making the straps, tzarich ibud lishma, must be worked with proper intent. But the leather that's used for the actual boxes to cover the portions, einot tzarich ibud klal, doesn't even require working at all. If you want, afilu asa'o matzah, kasher, you can make it matzah. Matzah, like the bread of matzah, that's very plain, flour and water. So matzah refers to leather that's untanned. It's unworked. No flour, no resin has been rubbed on it, no salt. No ingredients have been added to make it more smooth. In fact, the Rambam says, there are many places where they have the custom la'asot otan ba'or matzah, to make the tefillin boxes with unworked leather. Apparently it was more expensive. It was too expensive. They couldn't do it. So they kept it low quality. But the ritzuot, these have to be worked, and they have to be worked with proper intent. The only person who can be involved in production of tefillin is a Jew. Because making the tefillin is like writing them. Because of the shin, which, as we said, we make in the skin. That's like writing a shin. And only a Jew who's obligated in tefillin to wrap them can write them, and therefore can make them. Therefore, if a goy were to make the covering or to sew them up, psulot, they would be disqualified. The same thing applies. Anybody who's disqualified from writing tefillin, like women or slave, should not make them either. Halakha Yud Zayin, the Rambam talks about the holiness of the tefillin. The rule is that the head tefillin is holier than the hand, and therefore, tefillah shel rosh eno sinota shel yad. If you have a box that was used for a head tefillin, you cannot convert it into a hand tefillin. Now, how do you do that? Head tefillin has 4 compartments, hand only has 1. Give it a second, and we'll talk about it. However, v'shel yad osinot shel rosh, but the hand tefillin can be converted to a head tefillin. Because we have a rule that we don't descend from higher levels of holiness to lower levels of holiness. So you can't go from shel rosh to yad, but you could climb up from yad to rosh. V'chein, so too this rule extends to the straps. Ritzu'ah shel tefillah shel rosh. If you have a strap that was used for the head tefillin, ein osinot litefillah shel yad, you cannot convert it to be used for hand tefillin. When do we say this rule, however? When you actually wore them. You actually used it for head tefillin. But if you have a head tefillin that nobody ever wore ever, if you wanted to convert it to a hand tefillin, that's permitted. How do you do that? Rosh has 4 compartments, Yad only has 1. Says the Rambam, Tole aleha or, you simply patch over it a piece of leather, ad sheteaseh achat, till it becomes like one piece, v'koshra al yado, and you tie it on your hand. No matter that inside there's still 4 holes. Put all the portions in 1 hole, and that's it, you're good. Halakha yudchet, tefillin shenifseku, hatfirot shelahen, if you have tefillin that the stitching snapped. Im hayushtei hatfirot zuk b'tzad zu, if it was 2 stitches, one next to another. O shenifseku shalosh tefirot, or there were 3 stitches that snapped, even if they're not next to each other. Afilu zu shelo keneged zu, even one not corresponding to another. Hare'elu psulot, that's enough to disqualify it. However, there's one caveat. When do we say this? B'yeshanot, old tefillin. Aval b'chadashot, but new tefillin, kol zman shepnei tavlan kayamot, so long as the face of their tavla, this either means the base is still intact, or some people say it means the square shape, it's still identifiable as a square shape of stitching, ksherot, then they're kosher if they're new. What's considered new in this context? Says the Rambam, ve'elu hena chadashot, what's considered new? Kol she'ochazin, miktzat ha'or shenikra tifro. If you were to hold on to the part of the leather where the stitching tore, v'tolin bo hatfilin, and you could hang the tefillin by that portion, v'hu chazak ve'eno nichrat, and it would be strong and not get cut off, not snap, hare'elu chadashot, that's considered new. V'im ein ra'oi litlot ba, but if you can't hang it by that portion because of wear and tear, it's so old that if you were to hang it by this loose, now snapped portion, it wouldn't hang. Elahu nifsak, it would snap. Hare'elu yeshano, that's considered old, and therefore that number of snaps already disqualifies it. Halacha yutet, another important halacha. Ritzu'ah shenifseka. If a strap snaps, that was a sewing snapping. What about a strap? I'm putting on tefillin one day. Happened to me just last year. I was putting on my hand tefillin, and boom, in the middle of tying it, it ripped. En kosher nota ve'en tofir nota. We don't seek to put it back together. You don't tie it. You don't sew it. Ela motzi'ah ve'gonza ve'osin acher. Take it out, bury it, make another one. V'shiyurei ritzu'ah. Also, leftovers of a strap, psulin, are disqualified. People think, I got my tefillin by my bar mitzvah, I'm putting it on every day, and now it's shrinking a little in some places, especially by the hand tefillin, by the knot, where you slide it up and down every single day, a lot of maneuvering over here, this stuff can shrink. And you think, you know what, it was kosher when it started, now it's just leftover, it's okay. No, says the Rambam, shiyurei ritzu'ah psulin. If you see it got less than the required amount, it becomes disqualified. Ad she'ehei arka ve'rochba kashi'ur yoter alav. Its length and its width must be like the amount that's prescribed or more. And if you see it shrinking, you must change your tefillin straps. Another final halacha is olam yizaher. A person should always be careful liot pnei ritzu'ah lemala, that the outside, the face of the strap, should be facing outwards. When you tie it to your hand and your head. The commentaries explain this is referring to the part that actually goes around your head. This part should never overturn. Talmud says that people that would catch themselves with overturned tefillin, they would actually fast. We don't do that today, but the point is it's very strict. When you're wearing the tefillin, the part that's actually around your head, you should make sure that it's facing outward. Same thing with the hand tefillin. The part that goes around your arm should be facing outward. The other parts, Shulchan Aruch says clearly, there's no problem at all. If you're facing inside, outside, you want to be focused and make it facing outside, no problem. But there's no hakpada. There's no particularity on the rest of the strings, the rest of the straps facing out. However, the one that's al yado va'al rosho, on your actual hand and on your actual head, you should be careful that the strap should always be facing outwards.